Always very interesting conversations going on in BBC Money Daily. We still want to continue with our post-budget reading analysis right here in studio. I still have my guests with me, Mr. Fred from the Africa Wildlife Foundation. Of course, he's the head of external affairs policies. And I also have with me Liz Nkukuu, who is a certified financial analyst. She will be talking to us much more on what stood out for her in the budget. Mr. Wohoro Ndohho will still be joining us virtually at a later time. But let's start with you, Liz. There is the conversation around digital service tax. It is currently computed at 1.5% of the gross digital, transactions that are made. Of course, all of us have an opinion about it. What do you say about it? Are we mature yet for, taxing the digital platform in our country?
I think the starting point is, what is the government trying to achieve and where are they coming from? I think if you look at how it has evolved and where we ended up maybe at digital taxation, it is that we have a budget that we need to fund. So we need to increase the tax base, and what we have seen over time is there's a lot of business that is happening on the digital side anyway. So what is then the government needs to do is to see how do you make it efficient to do it, because I'm sure that the people who are doing transacting business in their online, they might not significantly have issues paying taxation, but the question is how the efficiency around it, that is one of them, and how then do you make sure that people almost they feel the need to pay tax. So for example, I think the first question is, if you look at more developed countries, you actually feel nice that you're paying tax because you're not getting into a pothole, you have services, so even if you're parting with some of your money in form of taxation, you actually feel why you need to do it. So I feel like even for this digital taxation, one of the things that needs to have happened is a lot of education. I think people need to understand why they are doing it and how they are going to do it. Okay. So the fact that you don't understand how and why, I think brings a big tug of war. A
big issue in the matters of taxation. Of course, we'll still be continuing with that conversation and the proposal by Treasury that it can just recommend increase of taxes. Let me engage you, Mr. Fred, on this. You're passionate about conservation, rather. So how can the government incentivize taxation, even as we continue to talk about, conservation?
So taxes are a powerful tool to provide incentives or disincentives. The government needs money, and so taxes become the low-hanging fruit. I think that at AWF, we think that taxes can be used positively to create more conducive jobs that do not impact nature. Okay. So for instance, if you work with companies to look at the amount of water they use for production, and then incentivize those companies that reduce the use of water, that through taxes, then you are encouraging wananchi alongside businesses to use less water through your tax base. On the other hand, if you have companies that use water without necessarily thinking through its impact, then you increase their taxes. Okay, so you play around with the tax base in a way that allows companies, especially companies, to be incentivized to provide more to nature. And I come back to the point that nature is fundamental to everything that we do. And the more we can invest in nature, the more we increase our resource base for development. So really focusing on those taxes that allow people to conserve nature will be a powerful one. And then tax those who misuse nature as a way of decreasing their that incentive for their actions.
Amazing, and we'll be coming back to you on matters of how we can invest in nature. Let me get back to you, Liz, on the question of taxation and the policies that, Treasury was proposing. There was a proposal that Treasury can be able to just introduce any taxes anyhow, particularly on the value-added taxation, without necessarily taking that to Parliament for approval. So as a certified financial analyst, what do you think about that policy?
I think in the way the world operates, there is a position for everyone. Okay. So the executive should also make sure that they are working together with the legislature to make sure that the economy is, there is harmony. So if, for example, as the executive, you can just make some decisions and you need to, and you just push them down, then it creates a lot of destabilization. So it's very important that we actually look at the way the lawmaking process was done, why was it done that way? And if there is a reason why we need to change that, then we should. But in my view, I think because the legislature or the parliamentarians actually stand for the mwananchi, it's very important for them to have a say in what goes on. And in this situation whereby the cost of living has really gone up, we can talk about inflation being at 5%, but if today I went to buy bread, definitely my shopping basket is slightly lower. So with the cost of living having gone significantly high, I think it's good to involve everyone so that you can get views. So I would really not go for the executive just making a decision and taking it that way.
Exactly. Involving the public participation is the first process of budget making, really. So let's talk about the development on the capital markets. The good CS hinted about it. Talk to us about developments of the Capital Markets Tribunal as far as the budget is concerned.
You see, over time, what we have seen, the Capital Markets Authority, together with the market players, they have actually come up. The market has really grown. If you look at 2007 and where we are today, the number of products that have come in have actually increased. The complexities have also increased. And the people who are also participating in the market, they are pretty, they want to experiment on stuff.
Okay.
So occasionally you end up maybe not being on the right side of the law or something. So what needs then to happen is that the decision-making process needs to be hastened. So what the capital market, what the CS has done is that one of the proposals that they have is that anything that goes to the tribunal or is appealed to the tribunal, they have to settle that within 90 days, which is a really good thing because the markets are moving, there's capital involved in it, so the earlier you are able to make decisions on some of those things, the better it is. So I think for me that is a good move because it helps even the growth of the capital markets, and we are getting into more complex products.
Amazing.
Yeah.
As we bring this conversation to a close, gentleman and lady, I would like to hear your comments. What would you want to see on the next budget as far as building back better is concerned? You're passionate about conservation, Mr. Fred. Would you tell us what you'd love to see in the next year's budget?
So, yes, I would gladly do that. COVID-19 has basically exposed a weakness in our global economic system, and certainly Kenya has been significantly impacted that way. We have seen industries with significant impact on revenue flows coming in, including government itself. And the question we should be asking ourselves is, why did we have COVID-19 and how can we prevent another pandemic? And it is really at the root of the ecosystem health and imbalance. Because our ecosystems are imbalanced, we are in a situation where pandemics then are things that could come. But to protect our ecosystems, we need to have a collective action across the board. So in my opinion, we should be looking at how the ecology and the environment can underpin every sector of the environment, of the country, of the economy.
Exactly.
So at the moment, when you look at the economy, the sector of economics, the sector for social delivery and transformation, and the sector for governance are big. There is nothing that totally focuses on ecological transformation. And we think that we should be thinking of ecological transformation through every sector, from the agricultural sector to the manufacturing sector, through to every sector. We are looking at it at the moment only from an environmental sector perspective. And so we devote a little bit of money for the forest and a little bit of money for the oceans. But we should be devoting money within every sector to help every sector to think through what can they do within those sectors for transformation to happen. And if we do that, I think we will prevent another pandemic and create an ecosystem that provides support for Kenya.
Amazing. Ms. Nkukuu, 30 seconds. What do you want to see on the next budget?
So I think for me, the next budget needs to be revolved around the key challenges that we are facing. So there is a high cost of living, the physical deficit remains, yes, has been coming down, but expected to come down, but remains high. So the key question is, how are we going to make sure that we are not only looking at taxation as a matter, or borrowing as a matter of bridging the deficit? Can we make our institutions such that they can be able to be privatized, and that creates a different way of funding the budget? Because as long as we are looking at, if we cannot raise revenues, we have to borrow, then we are really at we are trading in very thin areas, and our budget ceilings, our debt ceiling is actually not that high. So let's look at other ways of getting revenue.
Amazing. Thank you so much for finding time and resources to make it here. Of course, my panelists are saying invest in nature and find innovative ways of funding the budget. And that's where we end it right here on Business Today. Thank you so much for staying with us the whole week as we brought you the stories that formed our headlines in the world of business, not just in Kenya, but internationally. I'm Brian Jojo Tieno. Business Today continues next week, but for now, you have